Hello, I'm Dot Porter. I'm the Curator for Digital Research Services at the Kislak Center for Special Collections, University of Pennsylvania. And I am here with Jacqueline Burek. She is a PhD candidate in the English department, also at Penn, and she is going to tell us about LJS 477, which is a really interesting little manuscript.
Well, thanks again for having me. So LJS 477 is one of the many preaching aids and manuals that were composed in the 13th century. So after the Fourth Lateran Council in 1215 officially made confession a required part of Catholic spiritual life, preaching aids and quarry books like this one became very popular. And this particular quarry book, which is the work of one scribe, it seems to be from about 1250, probably originating in Oxford. But while there are many texts of this type that emerge in this period, LJS 477 has a few characteristics that make it particularly interesting. So here we have the manuscript open to folio 1 recto, and we can see that it starts in the middle of a sermon at the top here. And this particular sermon is talking about donkeys right now. And we can get a sense from this topic about what makes LJS 477 so unique is its heavy emphasis on natural history. So much of the manuscript looks quite like folio 1 recto here. You have 2 columns of text with various marginal notes and cross-references. But if we, and this is also written in a small, heavily abbreviated scholastic script.
Yeah, it is quite small. You can see, here's my finger, and you can see how small that script is.
Yes, it's definitely interesting to parse through some of the readings sometimes. But here, if we turn the page, we can see another type of text that comes up quite frequently in this manuscript is these diagrams of distinctions. And so basically the idea is that you would have a word or a phrase which then you would subdivide even further to sort of parse out different meanings. Mm-hmm. And so, for example, on 3 recto, we can see here natura, which has been subdivided into animalis and inanimalis, so animate and inanimate, right? And then the scribe has subdivided animalis even further. And here again, we can see this interest in natural history that's coming out. So both in the sermons and in the distinctions, this is something that the scribe is very interested in. And this interest in natural history also comes up in his collections of florilegia that he includes in the manuscript as well. So these are mostly drawn from Aristotle's De Animalibus and Isidore of Seville's Etymologiae, but also include some other authors. And so if we turn to folio 56 recto here, you can see the beginning of the section on Isidore of Seville. So that starts right here, about halfway down the left column.
There. Okay.
And so you can see that here the scribe is talking about paradisos, paradise. And so the scribe goes on gathering various excerpts from Isidore of Seville and includes some other people as well. And he's also very interested in making sure he cites his sources quite specifically. So here we can see Isidore, Book 14 of the Etymologies, Chapter 3, right, in that citation, and he does that throughout this section.
And that's what, so there are like 2 little lines, and then the citation, and then another line.
And then a single line, yeah. And this happens in the body of the text. And he sometimes will also cite similar texts elsewhere. And this interest in citations and comprehensive references is also reflected in the very distinct interest he has in making sure that he can cross-reference across pages, right?
Right.
So this we can see through various numbers and letters that he applies. Mm-hmm. So at the bottom of the page, we have 12 here, and this is referencing the groups of folios that he's made. Oh. So each, there's several folios in each gathering, but it doesn't actually follow the gatherings of where the manuscript would be. It's just grouped more thematically.
Right, and so it's gatherings of topics rather than gatherings of pages.
Exactly. And within that, he has he lettered all the columns in alphabetical order. Mm-hmm. So that way you can see, here we go, C, D, E, F at the bottom.
Right, so I see C, right, there's C, D, E,
and F down here.
Wow.
And then that is supplemented by these Arabic numerals, which number down the middle in groups of 5. So that helps, between those 3, you to be able to cross-reference things in the manuscript. So for example, at the bottom here, we have a little sigil, right, the little diagonal line with a dot underneath it, about here for elementa, right? So this is an excerpt from Isidore about the elements, earth, water, fire, and air.
Right.
And so the scribe has marked here 11b3. So if we go to folio 50 verso, we can find, thank you, we can find 11
Right,
b,
11
b3
B
up here.
3.
And
Oh,
we
wow.
find him talking about, this is an exegesis from Wisdom 11, talking about how God has distributed everything in measure, number, and weight. So it's sort of like an
Wow.
interesting way of talking about how God's divine providence has managed to subdivide the world in ways that are useful, right, and
Neat.
intelligent and meaningful. And so
Wow.
this is sort of like how that interest in natural history can be really helpful in creating sermons. And so one last little interesting tidbit about this manuscript appears on 20 recto, where we have a very rare, actually, example of Hebrew that shows up in a 13th century English manuscript.
Look at that.
So here we have the Hebrew alphabet and the first 3 verses of the Song of Songs, and this is very interesting for a manuscript of this time period to include this. And actually, 20 recto also has a little bit of Isidore's etymologies and some other natural history excerpts here, as well as just some other religious materials. So actually, this little page right here sums up what LJS 477 is all about quite nicely.
Very good. So is it thought that the same scribe who wrote the rest of the manuscript wrote this Hebrew as well, or is that...
Well, since there's this empty space at the bottom here, it seems like that would be a good...
Right, so
a
he
good
left
guess
it...
to make,
right,
yeah.
that makes a lot of sense, because the rest of the manuscript is sort of chock full of phrase.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is great. Thank you so much, Jacqueline.
Thank you so much.